Welcome to the big show, everyone. Gosh, I mean, this may be our biggest start yet. I'm looking at so many people tuning in. Clearly, this is an important topic and something that I think is resonating with everyone as I look at all these likes. Before we even get started, welcome, as I said, to the big show. I am Trish Regan. It's Trish Regan Show. We got a lot to get to. Checks in the mail, so they say. Find out if you're going to qualify for this as Donald Trump floats the idea. Not floating. He's saying he wants it. This is on his agenda. It's like top of his list. It's amazing to me that actually the mainstream media is really ignoring this one. I guess they probably don't like it because they think it's going to be popular with the folks, so to speak. So they're kind of ignoring it. Anyway, he put this out on Truth Social over the weekend. We're going to get into the details. It all comes as we look at an end in sight to that shutdown. It's because the Democrats caved, and woo, is this creating some commotion internally, including at The View. Chuck Schumer, watch out, the sun is coming for you.
This was a choice by Republicans to cut SNAP benefits. This was a choice by Republicans to cut ACA subsidies. This was a choice by the Republicans to gut the federal government and federal employment. Democrats had nothing to do with it. They just caved and surrendered. I think Chuck Schumer, his days are over.
Oh, wow. Do you really say so, Sonny? I don't know. I mean, if you say so, I thought his days were over a while ago. We shall see. Plus, the BBC is in all kinds of trouble. It's getting big play in Europe right now. My colleague from 76 Research is overseas, and he says it's dominating the headlines. Listen, the top dogs are out, including the woman who used to be president of NBC, who miraculously became CEO of BBC, and is now out of a job because of some really unbelievable editing. Donald Trump's not having it. He's suing for $1 billion. Welcome, as I said, to the program. And we begin today's show on the very, very big news. Donald Trump wants dividend checks for everyone. Checks in the mail, as they say, announcing a $2,000 rebate or tariff dividend check over the weekend. Here he writes, people that are against tariffs are fools. We are the richest, most respected country in the world with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. 401ks are highest ever. We are taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down our enormous $37 trillion debt. Record investment in the USA, plants and factories going up all over the place, right? He's been getting everybody to invest in the good old US of A. And then he leaves you with this, which I highlighted, a dividend of at least $2,000 a person, he says not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone. So pretty definitively declaring something that he's talked about. He's sort of mused about in the past. I want to go back to an appearance he made, maybe it was about 6 or 8 weeks ago on OAN. He talks about dividends and the idea of maybe giving $1,000 to $2,000 to each American. Now he's coming out definitively saying it's $2,000 per person, not including high-income people. He's not defining that specifically. We can talk about it, but here he is on OAN just a short time ago. Watch.
We also might make a distribution to the people, almost like a dividend to the people of America.
How much are you thinking for that, sir?
Well, we're thinking maybe $1,000 to $2,000. Be great.
Inflation is completely stable.
Yep.
It's around target rate, and the country is ultimately taking in unprecedented amounts of tariff revenue, more than $200 billion at this point in time, sir. What do you believe this extra source of revenue can be put towards, and how big of a game changer is it for your administration?
Well, ultimately, because we're talking about a just kicking in. They're just starting to kick in. But ultimately, your tariffs are going to be over $1 trillion a year, in my opinion. We're going to do something. We're looking at something where, number one, we're paying down debt because people have allowed the debt to go crazy. But, with growth, with the kind of growth we have now, the debt is very little, relatively speaking. You grow yourself out of that debt. It's not a question of paying it. You grow yourself out. And the numbers are so much bigger than they ever were. The numbers we have now are bigger than they ever were. So when you have $36 trillion in debt, a year ago or 2 years ago, and you have a lot less revenue coming in, then you have 37 or 38. It's not 38 yet, but it will be. And
then those are different things.
So
okay, so
bigger.
just to sort of break it down into, and what I love, by the way, is that we do have a president that can talk economics. Trust me, Joe Biden would have gotten lost. like 20 seconds in to that soundbite. But what he's saying is like, we can handle more debt, possibly. Not that we ever want debt, but we can handle a little bit more. 37 trillion, which is a heck of a lot. It won't mean as much in the scheme of things if you're growing the economy fast, right? So if you've got a robust economy, it's like, you know, if you're a family making $1 million a year and you have $100,000 in debt, percentage-wise, you know, granted you don't want any debt, but hey, percentage-wise, it's a lot different than if you're a family making $100,000 a year and you have 80 or $90,000 in debt. You see, so he's making this comparison saying, hey, look, if we are able to grow our economy, then there's some room here for us to give these dividend checks. And like I said, he's talking $2,000, except for high earners. It was a very interesting carve out, and we can talk about that because one of my friends over the weekend, who's a constitutional law sort of scholar and mathematician, really, really bright guy, my friend Neil, and Neil is very conservative and loves Trump, but he's like, I don't know if we can get away with that, because if you're going to call this a dividend check, then maybe it just flat out has to go to every American voter, period, every American citizen. So this will be interesting to watch for. But you know what? He's no fool. He's been setting the stage, shall we say, since late July, when a reporter asked him about this, and he's like, yeah. You know, actually, you buddy, that's a smart question. You just made some news because I've been thinking about this for a while. Here we go. He's outside the White House.
Do you think there's the possibility of a rebate? We're thinking about that, actually. We have so much money coming in. We're thinking about a little rebate, but the big thing we want to do is pay down debt. But we're thinking about a rebate. That's a very good question. You just made a lot of news.
You just made some news, buddy. Yeah. And then over the weekend, as I said, on Sunday, now you'd think this would lead the newspapers everywhere, but yet you can't find it. You just can't find it. Because I think they worry, and we know the bias in the mainstream media, they worry this would actually make him too popular. Maybe they worry it won't come to fruition. We'll have to see, because you know what this does actually do? It puts a ton more pressure on the Supreme Court of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, who happens to be working on making a decision regarding the president's tariffs as to whether or not they are legal. And that decision is going to go over much more negatively, would you say, with the American people, if in fact there's a $2,000 check hanging out there for everyone and everybody can get a dividend payment if the tariffs go through, and all of a sudden the Supreme Court says you can't do this. Now, there are a lot of questions as to the legality. I mean, what does the president really have in terms of his ability to do things here? He's got these emergency powers in the Emergency Economic Powers Act, and it's something that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary of the United States, has spent a lot of time thinking about. He went on my former colleague, actually Larry's a great guy. Larry and I worked together at CNBC, and we missed each other oddly at Fox. I had left by the time he went into Fox, but he's a wonderful, wonderful man. And he went on with Scott Bessent, or rather Scott Bessent went on with him and explained why it is that it's believed the president will be able to get these tariffs through. And again, keep in mind, if they go through, he's got to live up to this promise of $2,000 per person dividend check. So he's kind of, in my estimation, trying to get the public invested in what is somewhat of a complex, kind of, difficult sort of issue, if you would. Listen to Bessent.
Larry, I came away very optimistic. The Solicitor General presented a strong case for the president's use of the IEEPA, the emergency tariff powers, that President Trump has used to balance trade, to negotiate with the Chinese on fentanyl, to secure rare earth magnets, to get the Indians to stop buying Russian oil. And that the Solicitor General made a fantastic case that the purpose of the tariffs is to rebalance global trade. We were in an economic emergency. We were near a tipping point, and you and I know exactly what that looks like. And President Trump has brought the U.S. back. On the other side, I thought that the plaintiffs almost embarrassed themselves. They clearly didn't understand foundational economics. They didn't understand the trade policy they were talking about.
Doesn't surprise me.
And I'm very optimistic, after listening to the questions at SCOTUS, that the IEEPA ruling is going to come President Trump and this administration's way.
Wow. Okay. So keep in mind, guys, it would be very costly if the Supreme Court suddenly decides this is not legal. Why would it be costly? Oh, we'd have to pay all those countries back, right? The tariffs. So that wouldn't be a very good scenario. So I kind of see this one as, he's got the ball and he's taking it and he's running with it all the way to the end zone. And the Supreme Court's like, whoa, if we don't okay this, what are we doing in terms of legitimacy of the executive office and its powers? What are we doing in terms of the overall sort of economic fragility of the country, which increasingly is looking better and better and better, right? As we look at the stock market, as we look at inflation coming down, still some real questions about jobs. Are we adding enough jobs in light of this sort of switch over to a very productive AI environment? And there's a lot of things to worry about within the context of that. But with this in mind, here he is kind of beating Mamdani to his own game. He's like, oh, Mamdani, you want free this, free that. Well, I'm coming out with a $2,000 dividend check. And that's because I'm making people money. I am making money for the United States of America. We're turning this thing into a business. Okay, government? I mean, unfortunately, we got the government back open and running pretty soon. I mean, fortunately, unfortunately, I just say unfortunately, just because it's kind of nice knowing that we can kind of exist somehow, some way, without them, right? Yeah, you don't need the government in business doing all that it's trying to do, because what do you know? Things have been A-okay so far, but nonetheless, the government shutdown is nearly over. Ladies and gentlemen, the Democrat Party has totally caved, and boy, oh boy, it's got some people kind of mad.
This was a choice by Republicans to cut SNAP benefits. This was a choice by Republicans to cut ACA subsidies. This was a choice by the Republicans to gut the federal government and federal employment. Democrats had nothing to do with it. They just caved and surrendered. I think Chuck Schumer, his days are over.
We have a shutdown, as you probably know, because the Democrats have gone, they're crazy. They're crazy. But they don't care if they hurt the country. But we've approved it 14 times. We've approved a opening up 14 times, and they keep rejecting it. And I guess maybe they will again. Let's see what happens. They want to have...
Well, that was on, Friday. And then today, you saw what just happened moments ago on that lovely little show called The View. The Democrats are caving here. It's the right thing to do. I mean, frankly, I don't think you had a choice. I think they were waiting until the election was over because they didn't want to look like they were somehow beholden to anyone. They were going to hold out for this utopian hope, even though they didn't have a prayer of getting anything done. And so today we see a reversal.
We've got plenty more on the other side. We will talk much more about this. Again, you're looking live at the Senate floor as the Democratic filibuster has been broken. We have so far reached 60. We're waiting for the official count. But right now, 60 votes that would unlock moving forward with this plan to reopen the government on the Senate side. A quick break. More on the other side.
All right. So this is actually very, very good news. The Democrats won't say that, but I would think that you want to actually get things up and running. It is not an advantageous position for either party, legitimately speaking, to be in. And yet this is what they're doing over on The View. I want to share with you Whoopi Goldberg effectively siding with Bernie Sanders and AOC and Mamdani, if he has anything to say about it, the communist faction. Watch.
My. You all treat us like you've met us before. So let us tell you what's been going on. The biggest sticking point in the longest U.S. government shutdown has been Democrats demanding that Republicans negotiate to extend health care subsidies that are about to expire. But last night, 8 Senate Democrats threw in the towel by siding with the GOP to advance a vote that could lead to the government reopening. And they tried to explain themselves to their unhappy colleagues. Take a look.
I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement. But waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome.
This agreement tonight.
Bad.
Oops. Let's go back.
Satisfied with this agreement. But waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome.
This agreement tonight,
Angus,
is a win for the American people. There was zero chance of dealing with the ACA issue as long as the shutdown continued. Now, I don't know, 50-50?
50-50.
But there's a lot better chance now than there was this morning.
This was a very, very bad vote. And what the election showed is that the American people want us to stand up to Trumpism, to his war against working class people, to his authoritarianism. That is what the American people wanted, but tonight, that is not what happened.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did you see everybody applauding there? You know why that is? Because somebody's holding up a sign saying applause now, cheer now, right? Because, you know, this show is heavily biased, heavily biased. FCC is looking into that, by the way. More on that coming up. But I would say that there's now some faction of the Democrat Party that's saying, wait, why is this happening? Why are you guys giving in? Why would you got to stand up to Trumpism, as Bernie says? But I'm sorry, in standing up to Trumpism, as you so want to do, what are you doing? You're actually cutting, 46 million people off of SNAP benefits? I don't think that that's really a way to go, frankly. But, you know, don't argue with Whoopi, who, by the way, can't seem to talk her way out of a paper bag. I mean, the way this woman goes on and on and on. I was looking at this show from this morning, and I was trying to clip it. And I'm like, she makes no sense. She's practically impossible to follow. So I tried to find a little snippet where there's some inkling of productivity going on in the brain cells, but it's not easy. Here she is complaining about somehow these are benefits that people are entitled to in her incoherent, ladies and gentlemen, rant.
I have no faith that they're going to negotiate and come back to the table. And you know, I'm glad that folks, maybe, because again, we have seen, you say.
Okay, we got point number one. You have no faith. You know, the guy from Maine, the senator from Maine is saying, well, now we've got a 50-50 shot. And she's like, well, how many faith? Okay, so we've got that. And now she's like circling around as she does.
This is going to happen, and then it doesn't happen.
Okay.
So surprise me and show me that this is really, that people are going to get their money, that people are going to get the money that they are entitled to. It's not a gift.
Right.
They're entitled to this money during when there's a shutdown. You're entitled to that money.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of, sort of, really not entitled to any money. Okay. Like that's kind of the whole point. Like these entitlements, when the government is shut down, they go away. And so when they go away, yeah, someone's going to get blamed. And right now the Democrats are being blamed. It's Sonny, I know it's very hard for you to understand, but they were the ones holding this up. So you can't do what you're trying to do. But hey, who am I to stop you? Because I look at this and say, good, get your popcorn ready. You got a Democrat Party that is fractured, that is messy, and that is giving up. Watch.
Jeffries
look like losers if they're just attacking each other in this. For some reason, Marjorie Taylor Greene was better at messaging the stakes of this shutdown, it feels like, than a lot of Democrats were. You have to give people the benefits they are entitled to under SNAP. You have to address the underlying issues of the crisis of healthcare in this country, but get government back working. No one can get anywhere. Flights aren't flying. The holidays are coming.
Yeah.
This is a welcome decision in my mind.
Okay.
Look.
You know, that's like the one person that makes any sense. She's a former conservative, kind of a never-Trumper, but nonetheless at least has some conservative roots in her. Sunny Houston, however, I don't really know what to say about this woman, other than I guess she was a lawyer at one point, so she tries to hold that up as some form of credibility. But she has at least lost it in my book, and apparently now she's going after the big head honcho, Schumer himself.
Let's be clear. The Republicans run the House. The Republicans run the Senate. The Republicans run the White House. The Republicans run the Supreme Court, as far as I'm concerned. This was a choice by Republicans to cut SNAP benefits. This was a choice by Republicans to cut ACA subsidies. This was a choice by the Republicans to gut the federal government and federal employment. Democrats had nothing to do with it. I want an opposition party. I think the Democrats caved. I think the Democrats let down the American people. And like you, Whoopi, I have absolutely no faith that the Republican Party will come to the negotiating table in good faith. You know, you do something like this, shame on you the first time. You do it twice, 3 times, 4 times, shame on me. Shame on the Democrats for even believing that the Republicans will, even vote on it. There's no
she's losing her way too.
Guarantee in this New Deal that there's going to be a vote. There's no even commitment to have a vote. So the bottom line is the Democrats went into this after a blue wave out of the American people saying we do want the opposition. We the working people want the Democratic Party to fight for them. And now they just caved and surrendered. I think Chuck Schumer, his days are over. If he cannot keep his caucus together, he needs to go. He needs to be replaced.
Do you hear, Chuck? Oh boy. I mean, I don't know. Can you pull a Chuck Schumer like you did on Tucker Carlson on her on The View? Is this going to walk her off the ramp somehow? Can you get her fired? I think the FCC is already working fairly hard on getting rid of the whole show altogether. But now you see what I'm saying? They're really splintered now. This is not a good look. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? As Donald Trump has said, they went with a communist in New York. They went with a communist. And now the communists are out there saying, hey, we wanted this shutdown to keep on going, whereas the pragmatic senator, Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire, and then you got Maine, and by the way, 6 other senators are saying, hey, no, this doesn't really work because we don't want to cut this many people off from their benefits. You don't want people to lose their SNAP benefits. I mean, the Republican Party has said they were trying to find ways to help them out. They don't want people losing their military pay. Remember how it turned out? Donald Trump found someone with deep pockets that was going to help contribute to the military pay. He's been trying to find some workarounds. But the Democrats have made it clear they want that $1.5 trillion. And he's like, I'm not giving the $1.5 trillion. It's just not happening. You're not going to get the $1.5 trillion because that means it's going to go all out to the states so that they can spend it however they like. And in many states, that means they're spending it on illegals that Joe Biden brought into the country. So no. He said that one's not happening. And by the way, it was set to expire anyway. You guys put it in as an emergency provision back in 2020. It was set to expire. You knew the drill. And now that day's here. Okay, and he's in charge. He's in the seat. Meanwhile, even over on NBC, it seems like they're kind of losing it too. They're playing this whole, hey, Democrats, what are you doing here? On NBC, the news anchor on the weekend show started putting it to none other than Hakeem Jeffries. This is a rare thing, guys, when the media is actually mad at the Democrats. But, you know, they're kind of in with the socialists and the communists instead now. Here, I want you to take a look.
Mr. Jeffries, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer did make a new offer, effectively saying, let's extend Obamacare subsidies for 1 year in exchange for reopening the government for 1 year. You have said that you would support that proposal, but just last month you said this. Take a look.
A 1 year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits is not acceptable. It's a non-starter. It's a non-starter.
So, Leader Jeffries, what changed?
Well, the proposal that I was making reference to in October was something that was floated out there by a handful of rank-and-file House Republicans, and that was immediately rejected by House Republican leadership because they have no interest in driving down the high cost of living for everyday Americans. The Schumer proposal, of course, was offered in good faith.
Okay, so at least he's like trying to have to do some explaining. But the reality of where we are right now is that increasingly it looks like this shutdown is going to end. And it's because Democrats now are coming on board and saying like enough is enough. It's just getting a little bit crazy. In the meantime, what did I say to you? That probably we would be looking at a shutdown that ended relatively soon, in part just because of the practicalities of all of this, right? The practicalities being, you know, this is getting kind of hard to do, shall we say, and it's causing now internal chaos within the Democrat Party. It's certainly causing some concern as, you know, flights are supposed to be taking off. Let me show you this. This just broke moments ago. The Wall Street Journal carrying the story. Donald Trump is now threatening to dock the pay of absent air traffic controllers. Gosh, it feels like the 80s all over again, right? Wasn't this what Reagan did? Trump threatening, as I said just moments ago, to dock the pay of absent air traffic controllers. Simultaneously, we're talking carrot and stick. He's going to recommend a $10,000 bonus for air traffic controllers who remained on the job during the government shutdown. So if you tried to skedaddle out of there, he knows who's loyal and who's not. So he is now at this point in time, again, I want to go to the Wall Street Journal first reporting this here just moments ago. President Trump threatening to dock the pay of air traffic controllers who do not return to work amid a government shutdown. The FAA ordered traffic reductions at 40 major airports. Don't forget, just on Friday last week, we had 700 flights that day that were canceled. Nearly 1,700 scheduled flights into, out of, or around the U.S. were canceled, and over 3,600 flights were delayed as of Monday morning. So this is a backup, right, that can be quite problematic. Let's face it, not just for travel, but for the economy as well, because you've got things that need to be shipped all over the place. We're going into the holiday season, and Donald Trump's like, okay, enough. You guys want to play this game? I can play it too. Again, what we'll have to deal with, and of course, is the question of whether or not this is all quote unquote legal. But like I said, he's taken the ball and he's running to the end zone. I'll share with you what he put out on social media. Quote, all air traffic controllers must get back to work now. Now in capital letters with, I was going to say that's 3. Is it 4 exclamation points? I think just 3. But we get the point. Anyone who doesn't will be substantially, quote, docked. He said that he would recommend air traffic controllers who didn't take time off during the shutdown receive that $10,000 per person bonus. This is a big deal. So again, very reminiscent, if you would, of what we saw back in the 80s. This is incredible. You saw those numbers on the screen. 3,600 flights delayed as of Monday morning. 25,730 scheduled flights have been canceled. That's about 6.3% of Monday's flights overall, according to a report in the journal. So more than 1,900 scheduled flights into, out of, or around the U.S. have now been canceled. That's updated from 1,700. So we got a situation on our hands, all right? This is all the more reason why you want to make sure that the government is back up and running, albeit in some form or another. I don't think it's really ideal to have the shutdown, although, you know, from the sidelines we can look and watch and see and say, hey, it's amazing what we can do without those guys when push comes to shove, right? We're still able to be in a rather, I would say, beneficial spot, because like life is still going on, even at these big networks like ABC. You know, we talked about this last week, and I was with you over the weekend, and we were looking at how Jimmy Kimmel's show was just abruptly canceled on Thursday, and they went to reruns for the rest of the week. And now this mystery is kind of deepening because ABC still hasn't given us any clue as to why Jimmy was out like that so unexpectedly. David Duchovny was supposed to be on the show. Remember, I was joking, I haven't heard that name in a while. David Duchovny was not going to be on because it got canceled at the 11th hour, allegedly due to what they're saying was a personal matter. Of course, don't forget, this show has been just riddled with scandal because of what had happened with Charlie Kirk. And the comments that Jimmy Kimmel made right after Charlie Kirk had died were viewed as, and they were, insanely insensitive. You know, to say, okay, well, now we're going to like take pot shots and blame MAGA for this. I mean, which is what he did. He's like, oh, you know, this is one of MAGA's own, et cetera. I won't even show you the clip, but you know what I'm talking about. Well, now we've just learned that not only was he out for, quote, personal reasons, but he apparently was out with his wife, who was running around, this is her, giving a podcast interview with him. So what I didn't realize is that Jimmy Kimmel's wife is also his executive producer and his head writer on the show. Because, guys, I kept looking at this story as it was going on. I was like, how, and I even said to my husband, like, how could it be? Like, that's so messed up. I've worked in TV long enough to know you have a lot of different views around you. You know, yeah, even when you work at Fox, believe it or not. And I always prided myself on making sure we had some different views. Even on this show, where we're a very slim, very small team, I got 2 other folks here who, you know, would say to me, hey, Trish, like, that's kind of off. Or Trish, you know, they try and point out and like checks and balances. And you can tell me I'm wrong all day long. You know, eventually I'll make a final decision, but I want the input, right? You need the input. And I thought, why is it that Jimmy has no one telling him, hey, you know, Larry Tribe, he tried that business, calling the guy who is being charged with killing Charlie Kirk, calling him one of MAGA's own. He tried that over the weekend, and guess what? He got shot down fast, and he had to shut down rather pretty fast. And Larry Tribe, the Harvard guy, constitutional law professor, who might have a side gig or is lining himself up for some kind of side gig at MSNBC, he had to come out with a statement on X saying, no, that's not what I meant, and like it's wrong, and I'm really sorry, blah, blah, blah. And yet this guy, Jimmy, he proceeds to go forward with the joke on Monday after this had all happened over the weekend. I'm like, how could that be? And then I learned that his head producer is his wife. Okay, so you want to talk about some funny nepotism going on, aside from, fishing in the company pond, which apparently he likes to do, because I think the ex-wife was actually his wardrobe designer on another show. Woohoo, Jimmy. Don't get out much, do you? Anyway, this lady, Molly McNearney, she had to have written that. And then she, as Jimmy's show was unexpectedly canceled last week, was with him out there on a podcast talking about how much she hates Trump. I mean, we're talking serious TDS. I have a feeling he's lining himself up for an MSNBC gig, which, by the way, more power to you, Jimmy. That's about where you belong right now, over on cable, not on network airwaves, because the FCC does control network airwaves. And you should try to be, well, I don't know, just a little less bias and a little less TDS on steroids. But how can you be? I mean, for goodness sakes, your wife, your executive producer, and your head writer, she's all one and the same, and now we know how she feels.
It's weird. When Donald Trump was first elected, I was so upset. We all were. But I remember thinking, I understand it, because I grew up in a very conservative Republican house. I mean, I bought my dad a Rush Limbaugh tie in high school. I voted Republican straight ticket, and that's what I was told to do. And then I left St. Louis, Missouri, and I met people from different backgrounds, and I started to understand different things and different needs and different people. And there's like a little bit of sympathy I have for people in my family that I feel are kind of...
Okay, so this is her weird way of saying, hey. Just like Colbert did the other day on some podcast, I'm actually more conservative than you think. So now you get Jimmy Kimmel's head writer, executive producer, and wife out saying, I grew up in a conservative family, so maybe I'm not as bad and evil as you think. Maybe Jimmy's not as bad and evil as you think. Same thing Colbert did. But then she kind of twisted a little bit. Watch.
Being deliberately misinformed every day, and they're deliberately being...
Okay. They're being deliberately misinformed every day. Oh gosh, Molly, if any of your relatives are watching, I mean, I guess you would accuse me of deliberately misinforming them every day. You know what we try and do here on the Trish Regan Show and a lot of other channels that are out there right now? We try to actually present the truth every single day as we see it. So when Joe Biden is stumbling around and can't get through his sentences and wanders off because he's so obsessed with the parachuter at the G7 meeting and has to get escorted back to the conversation for a picture by Giorgia Meloni, lovely her, from Italy. You know what? We show that whole tape, even though you guys don't want to, because you guys have your own bias that you're putting forward. Let's listen to the rest.
Informed every day, and they believe it. But it hurts me so much because of the personal relationship I now have, where my husband is out there fighting this man. And to me, that...
Really? Is that how you see it, Molly? Kimmel's fighting Donald Trump. I'm telling you guys, he's looking for a new gig.
Voting for Trump is them not voting for my husband and me and our family. And I unfortunately have kind of lost relationships with people in my family because of it. This is not just Republican versus Democrat for me anymore. It is, to me, it's family values. And it's really hard for me because I grew up believing in these Christian ideals of taking care of the sick and taking care of the poor. And I don't see that happening with this Republican Party. And so I feel like I'm kind of in constant conflict, and I'm angry all the time, which isn't healthy at all. But I personalize everything now. When I see these terrible stories every day, I'm immediately mad at certain aunts, uncles, cousins who put him in power. And it's really hard. And I wish I could like deprogram myself in some way, but I get really angry. And I've sent many emails to family like right before the election.
All right, I don't know how much more.
Here's the 10 reasons not to vote for this guy.
I don't know how much
Please
more we
don't.
can take of her, so I'm just going to get off of her. But clearly, she's suffering from some really, really bad case of terminal TDS. But I think it helps to explain a lot, right? Because she's telling you like she can't even deal with her family members because they like Trump and it's so hurtful and this and that. But I'm mostly stuck on this. Executive producer and head writer. I mean, Jimmy, come on. You couldn't find anyone else. Well, that explains it, okay? He's got a TDS inflicted wife. And she's in charge of the scripts, and she's in charge of the entire team. So do you think anybody on that team is like daring to speak up to Jimmy's wife? I mean, not only is she in charge, but she's married to the guy. So it's a little uncomfortable, like for everyone else. And so, yeah, then he says things like this, what he did, and then comes through with an apology and says, oh, it was never my intention to make light of a murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. Not much of an apology. I mean, we talked about it at the time. He didn't retract anything he said. He didn't say anything in terms of to Erica Kirk. I'm really, really, really sorry. I mean, nothing, right? And Erica was asked by my former colleague, you've seen this soundbite. If you haven't, go back and watch it from Saturday's show or from Friday. But, she said, look, I don't believe it. Like, Sinclair asked me, what do you want to do? She's like, if it's not in your heart, if you don't actually believe it, then don't bother. And clearly it's not in Jimmy, or at least his wife, who writes all his copies, heart. You just heard her from this week. So interesting that he seems to be out, right? Like his show's just mysteriously off the air. Here's the headline in the Daily Mail. Mystery is Jimmy Kimmel's show is canceled at the 11th hour over host personal matter. I mean, is she having a freaking breakdown because of Donald Trump? You kind of wonder, don't you? I mean, I'm sorry. It's really tough for some people. I get it. So ABC, they're having all kinds of issues. They got Whoopi, who's off the rails. Now they got a Democrat Party that's off the rails. You've got a new report that came out showing 87% of the shutdown coverage was very favorable towards the Democrats, which is why MRC, Media Research Center, otherwise known as newsbusters.org. They're great. They do a lot of analysis on the mainstream media. And they're saying look, this is nothing short of propaganda. That's what this is. And so now Kimmel's kind of in trouble there over at ABC. You've got the FCC looking at Whoopi and company there. Yeah, they're taking aim possibly at The View. They've got an investigation going on. And the BBC just got a big giant wake-up call because they had to, I don't know if they fired these two people, stepped down that were running the BBC. One of them, incidentally, happens to be the former president of NBC. That would be Deborah Turness. So she's now out as a result of this editing scandal. And if you watched the Trish Regan show, you saw this because we brought it to you. Actually, we were one of the first people to bring you this story last week after the Telegraph was reporting they had gotten a whistleblower report showing that apparently somebody had decided to edit some stuff on Donald Trump just weeks before this past election. And they were editing it at the BBC in a way to deliberately make him look bad per this whistleblower. So now Deborah's out. Wait till you see her response as well as her cohort there. But let's go back to what the Telegraph found. I want to show you.
The BBC claims to be the pinnacle of impartial reporting. But what if there was an internal dossier that revealed that wasn't the case? The Telegraph has seen a letter that reveals one of the BBC's own independent advisors repeatedly warned that the broadcaster had serious and systemic problems. A week before the US election, BBC Panorama released a documentary called Trump: A Second Chance, and in it, they played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. and we fight. We fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together two clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
This is really amazing.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's
really different.
It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Whoa! Do you see all that time going by?
We fight like hell.
Okay,
now,
so
it's true that a lot of people will still feel Trump's claims that in 2021...
Okay, you just don't do that. You can't edit like that. I mean, you're not 60 Minutes. They had to pay 16 million. That was ABC. Forgive me, because they said something that was not true about the president on the air, even though, by the way, the anchor knew it wasn't true. He decided to say it anyway, even though he was warned repeatedly. That would be little Georgie Poo over at This Week with George Stephanopoulos. So ABC's had this problem, and then CBS had this problem, right, with 60 Minutes. They made Kamala actually sound smart. I told you that editor deserved an Emmy just for that alone. Right, forget about journalism. I mean, who the heck can make Kamala look smart? And then these guys are out there taking clips that are hours apart from each other, trying to make sure that you somehow think that Donald Trump is a super negative force. And you want us to believe, okay, here's one of the honchos, okay? So this is the BBC director, Tim Davie, resigning over this scandal. That's him. And then you have the CEO, Deborah Turness, who used to run, interestingly, NBC. Amazing how incestuous all of this is. Deborah Turness, the former NBC president, she's out, and she was asked about it this morning.
I would like to say it has been the privilege of my career to serve as the CEO of BBC News and to work with our brilliant team of journalists. I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me.
Good.
But I'd like to make one thing very clear. BBC News is not institutionally biased. That's why it's the world's most trusted news provider.
Why did you fail to deal with the mistakes that were made?
And see my teams. Thank you so much.
Right, do you think that the journalists are corrupt, like President Trump says? Do you think the journalists
our journalists aren't corrupt. Our journalists are hard-working people who strive for impartiality, and I will stand by their journalism.
Is there institutional bias at the BBC?
There is no institutional bias.
Come
Mistakes
on.
are made, but there's no institutional bias.
But why weren't the mistakes dealt with on Trump, on anti-Semitism, on women's rights?
I'm sure that story will emerge, but for now I'm going to go and see our team.
Do you think the board acted against you?
This way, Deborah.
Thank you.
You know, Debbie, I'm really sorry for you, but it's so interesting because she did run NBC, and we know NBC has their share of bias, and now, of course, we see that the BBC has its share of bias. Oh, and let's not forget how much money the BBC was getting from the United States, right? All in the name of goodwill to spread our message overseas, because it was Obama that decided we need to be able to compete on the international stage in our messaging. So he got rid of the Smith-Mundt Act, right? Repealed it, changed it. It used to be that you couldn't actually pay these places to get a point of view out, but now they're doing that all over the world, right? And so the BBC was actually getting money, believe it or not, from the State Department. So they had a lot on the line if you think about it. And now he's suing for $1 billion. And Deborah and Davies, they are both out. So they are leaving as a result of this crisis. And here's what I'd say. Okay, fine. Like if there was no bias that you're worried about, if there was none at all, then Deborah, why are you leaving? Why are you stepping down? I mean, wouldn't you stay and fight? If you're saying, okay, I got to quit because of this, there's a reason you're quitting. And the reason you're quitting is because there were no checks and balances on this crazy bias that is rampant. I mean, just watch the BBC News anytime you go to Europe. I mean, boy, do they hate Trump. They really, really hate him. And again, you just go back to this clip.
We're going to walk down
to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Really, really different things, okay? Like, that is not acceptable as a journalist, as I said, unless you're CBS News, 60 Minutes. But you know what? It's clearly not acceptable. You know I'm joking around. Like, it's not acceptable there either. And that is why they are paying the price that they paid. And I realize they're really upset that Skydance came in and bought Paramount and they're all going to be out of a job. But you know what? Hey, it's the way the cookie crumbles. And I'm sorry if you guys are any good. If you're decent at all, then hey, you will find a way to succeed outside of the mainstream media. But you're probably not very decent. Other than that one editor that's quite talented. If we could just somehow position him in a new field, right? Entertainment. Hey, that's what it is. All this fake news is entertainment. By the way, go over and check out 76 Research if you haven't. Use code word dollar for all of my investing research. It's a really wonderful publication. I really encourage you to do that. Maybe you'll have some investing to do when you get your big check. This is a very fascinating story. As I said, we began the story talking about these $2,000 checks, and I'm just curious. I'm going to ask the audience, because we are live. What do you think? Like, is this the right move here? Is this just a political plot? Is he trying to get the buy-in from the people to kind of put some pressure on the Supreme Court so that they okay the tariffs? I mean, I would think the pressure's already there because, as I said, it's going to be very costly if this thing gets overturned. He does have some other emergency powers that I think that he could put into play, and I think he could actually use some very directed tariffs that are not as broad, that he still would have some legal oomph behind. But if they come forward and they do this, well, then nobody's getting those $2,000 dividend checks. A lot of you, I'm curious, because I was looking at some of the news over the weekend, and I think I tweeted this out, and you guys were like, hey, we have to pay down our debt. We've got this $37 trillion in debt, and it's a lot. And somebody else, as I mentioned earlier in the show, had said to me, a friend, is it really fair to say we're going to have a cutoff? Because if it's a dividend check, then we've all made money, right, collectively as a country, and then the money should therefore go to everyone. You might not be in a position where you can say, hey, only certain people get it. But I think Donald Trump is no fool here. He's like, okay, it's not going to go over well if it looks like I'm giving $2,000 out to billionaires, plus they don't really need it. So let me give it to the working class Americans who have been hurting. And before you say, okay, is this going to cause more inflation? Because that would be my instinct, right? That would be my fear. And let's be honest. Like during 2020 and the third time around, you had Biden sending out the stimulus checks because, hey, Trump got to send his two, Biden had to send his third, combined with Chuck and Nancy spending just oodles of money, trillions of dollars that we didn't have, including the $1.5 trillion that they're trying to re-up, right, for healthcare, and that's what the shutdown's about. On top of which, you had Jerome Powell over at the Federal Reserve printing and printing and printing and printing. And so all of those things combined did lead to massive double-digit inflation on the producer price index, 9.6 or 9.8% inflation in consumer prices, and that was not good, right? Like we all lived it, and it was not good. And if they were smart, they would have tried to keep inflation contained, because they had to have known that would put Donald Trump in a more positive light with the American people. They'd say, hey, I'll take a few mean tweets if it means lower prices at the gas pumps and more stability in my family's life, economically speaking. And so that's where we are right now, where they're saying, okay, $2,000, we like it, but the question being, would this create inflation? And I'm going to tell you, I think we're in a different environment. And I'm not saying this just because I like Trump and want to be supportive of the tariff policy here. I don't think, all tariffs are created equal, and there's some reasons to do this, especially on the China front. Very, very important nationally, strategic, economic, and frankly, security-wise, strategic reasons to be more aggressive with countries like China. But the question of, can we afford the $2,000, per person? Possibly. And his point is, we're going to grow the economy so much that it won't be as detrimental because we can handle a little bit more debt, so to speak. Not that we really want a lot of it, right? But that we can handle a little bit more. Again, he explains this so well, like Joe Biden never could, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States speaking with OAN.
We also might make a distribution to the people, almost like a dividend to the people of America.
Boom. Okay. And then the reporter says, how much?
How much are you thinking for that, sir?
Well, we're thinking maybe $1,000 to $2,000. Be great.
Inflation is completely stable.
Okay, so now he goes into sort of his reasons why he thinks it can. Now, here's my question for you. Do you think you qualify for it? Listen to what he says on why he thinks, first of all, we can manage this, because I would love to see Joe Biden talk like this.
Yep. It's around target rate, and the country is ultimately taking in unprecedented amounts of tariff revenue, more than $200 billion at this point in time, sir. What do you believe this extra source of revenue can be put towards, and how big of a game changer is it for your administration?
Well, ultimately, because we're talking about a just kicking in. They're just starting to kick in. But ultimately, your tariffs are going to be over $1 trillion a year, in my opinion. We're going to do something. We're looking at something where, number one, we're paying down debt because people have allowed the debt to go crazy. But, with growth, with the kind of growth we have now, the debt is very little, relatively speaking. You grow yourself out of that debt. It's not a question of paying it. You grow yourself out. And the numbers are so much bigger than they ever were. The numbers we have now are bigger than they ever were. So when you have $36 trillion in debt a year ago or 2 years ago, and you have a lot less revenue coming in, then you have 37 or 38. It's not 38 yet, but it will be. And the numbers are so much bigger. All of a sudden, 38, you're under-levered, whereas for 36, you were highly levered. We're not highly levered anymore. Now, with that being said, we'll pay back debt, but we all...
Yeah, so he wants to pay back the debt, but simultaneously, he wants to make sure that the people get something out of this as well. I mean, I like it in the sense that, hey, he wants everybody invested in this. He wants everybody invested in the policy. He wants everybody invested in America. And who knew that you could actually create a profitable engine out of this country, right? He's like, we got stuff to sell. We got people to bring in for investing. And so we want to make sure that that helps everyone. So that's one of the questions. We're talking everyone. How do you make sure it helps everyone? And who is sort of front of the line here? As he said, $2,000 a person. I mean, that could be $4,000 a family. And I don't know, do you have to work or not? I'm looking at your comments. Don Baca, that's funny. That's one of the reporters from OAN. He does look young, I gotcha. But anyway, I'm looking at some of the others, and Eric's pointing out, hey, anybody working 2 or 3 jobs should be able to qualify. And I hear you, right? Like, why, just because you're working 2 or 3 jobs, does that mean that suddenly you don't qualify because you're making more money, because you're choosing to be industrious? And this is where you're going to start getting into a sticky zone, and it gets back to taxation, et cetera. Hey, why not just make it for everybody and say, like, this is the deal. If you're an American citizen, that's a big and important distinction, right? If you're an American citizen, then you should be able to partake in this beneficiary dividend, and everybody's going to get it. And there you go, right? And can we handle it right now? I think that we're in a very different environment. I don't think inflation is as front and center. Obviously, you've seen that gas prices have been going down. We've seen the consumer price index coming in pretty darn tame, so much so that people are worried on the other side, right? The bias is turning towards, okay, we need to do what we can to keep this economy going. Maybe we need to print a little bit more money over at the Federal Reserve. You got Jerome Powell, who's already cut rates, and now he's looking to do more rate cuts. You've got the private sector jobs reports coming out, ADP, for example, as well as Challenger going Christmas that came out last week. And what they're showing is that layoffs are going up and we're not adding as many jobs. Now, the ADP report often gets revised, so I would take it with a grain of salt, but they're showing only roughly 43,000 jobs being added to the economy in the last month. And we need to be growing at a much bigger rate in order to really, start to see some growth. So maybe Donald Trump is saying to himself, hey, people kind of need this. people kind of, they could actually benefit from getting this $2,000 in their pockets. So For Real Eye is saying $2,000 to seniors would be monumental. Let that sink in. Another landslide in 2028 without the help of the stupidity of the lefty loonies. Hey, I mean, who needs universal basic income when you're talking about this in a different way? Just think about it for a second, in a different way, because the idea here is that we're turning the U.S. into kind of a business itself for the people of the U.S., right? So instead of gimme from the government, it's like, hey, how can we think about, becoming more like a sovereign wealth fund? And if you guys, you want to be here, he's talking about the 50-year bond, for example, right now. Why not, right? Rates are low. Get some security locked in. I mean, this team is so financially astute. You got Bessent, who's brilliant as a financier. You've got the president himself. He's surrounded himself with smart people. And they're not like the typical politicians. They're trying to think like financiers, and they want to finance the America of the future. So all of this is really fascinating. We're watching it here in real time. I know, Cat Crazy, I hear you. No more printing. No more printing. We don't want the Fed doing that. But you know what the president's point is on this? He has said, look, it's still our middle class that's hurting. Our middle class, the folks out there that are working two jobs, just trying to do everything right, they're the ones really, really hurting in this environment. And so he feels that they're being unfairly penalized by these higher rates because they're the ones, middle class, they need the car loan, right? You need the car loan in order to buy the new car. Well, you're not going to move any cars off the lot if the car loans are too expensive. Same with housing. You're not going to be seeing much turnover, not a lot of flexibility. Some people can't afford to move into a new home because they can't buy it or they can't sell it at the appropriate rate because mortgage rates are so high. So it's an interesting thing to think through. Oh boy, peace of my mind. It's a good day, right? 2,500 likes and still counting. I think that you guys really, really, really like the idea of getting a $2,000 check right about now. So, he wants you to have it. Again, Donald Trump coming forward with $2,000 dividend checks, a promise that he made or started to make as far back as July. Will you qualify? Probably not if you're a high earner. How are you defining a high earner? It's probably anybody in that top tax bracket. So if you're paying the most on your federal taxes, my hunch is that you're not going to be able to qualify for this, I should say. But I want to go back to what the president said as far back as July. This was something that was on his radar.
Do you think there's the possibility of a rebate? We're thinking about that, actually. We have so much money coming in. We're thinking about a little rebate, but the big thing we want to do is pay down debt. But we're thinking about a rebate. That's a very good question. You just made a lot of news.
Indeed. You just made a lot of news. I'll tell you guys, it's going to be very hard to compete with him because he's just thinking the way everyday folks think. And the Democrats find themselves on the losing side of everything. Case in point, here's a Democrat representative who went on to MSNBC to say, like the ladies on The View, how disappointed he is in the Democrat Party. I mean, how dare, Adam Smith says, the representative, how dare they give in to Donald Trump? How dare they actually move to reopen this government? You understand how unpopular this is?
And since I have you, can I quickly get your reaction to the potential end of the shutdown?
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I think Democrats were fighting the absolute right fight. I don't intend to vote for this agreement. I do hope that those of us who are trying to stop Trump will recognize that the far larger issue is the cruelty that Donald Trump showed during the shutdown. Not only was he unwilling to address the healthcare crisis that is going to deny millions of Americans health insurance and drive up the costs for tens of millions more, but he was actively doing everything in his power to stop American people from getting food because he thought it would score political points. We are in a stronger position to push back against Trump now than we were on October 1st.
I'm sorry, buddy, but you're the ones that are preventing people from getting the food, okay? This was set to expire. You could have delivered a clean CR. You chose not to. Like that's your choice, okay? You chose not to. And he's in charge. He does have the House. He does have the Senate. He does have the executive branch. So when he's in charge, he's holding all the cards. So why are you going to sit there and scream all day, thereby hurting the very people that you are allegedly trying to help? Well, he's saying, I'm thinking about a $2,000 rebate dividend check.
October 1st. I think we should have kept at it, but it was not as easy a call as some are saying. And I think we really need to emphasize that this has showed Trump and his administration, and also Mike Johnson in the House of Representatives, my God, shutting down the entire House, for what, 7 weeks now? Complete abdication of responsibility at the expense of the American people. I want to continue to prosecute that and make sure that Democrats don't spend too much time turning on each other. I don't agree with the decision, but I know where the fight is. The fight is to try to stop Trump's policies and offer a better future to the American people. That's what we need to continue to be focused on.
Okay, you keep trying to focus on those things, okay? You can focus and try, but you guys, I don't know, every single time there's an issue, you're just always on the losing end of it. It's like there's no common sense anywhere to be found. And along comes Donald Trump, who's just sort of like, okay, I get it. This is what people need. Let's make sure that we give them safety. Let's make sure we give them security. Oh, and by the way, we can turn the US of A into a bit of a business here, and we can have dividend checks for everyone. So, take that, ma'am Dami, with your universal basic income. Take that, AOC. Take that, Bernie Sanders. Hey, let's come up with a capitalist approach to all of this. Really fascinating and interesting stuff. And I'll just say to you, they are no match for him. They are no match for him in any way, shape, or form. By the way, the market likes it. Market's up. We'll see how this all shakes out. But the good news is, the stalemate is ending. We're going to open up the government again. Maybe there's some rebate checks coming for some people, depending again on your income level. And you know what? The Republicans are looking like they just won again. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. It's wonderful to have you all here. Thank you for being here. Let me know what you think of the rebates, and we'll be back live again with you right here on the Trish Regan Show tomorrow.